I've had some people ask me, where do I buy an investment property in Melbourne? So here it is. In this episode, I'm going to show you my top 3 boom suburbs to get into in 2024 that are under $700,000. This formula that I've used in various different suburbs, and I've predicted massive capital growth. My best performer has been a couple of suburbs in Perth where some of my students got into. They made almost 100% capital growth in under an 18-month window, while many of those Perth suburbs were lucky to do 10 or 20% growth, even in the booming market that we've had. So stay tuned, I'll show you the analysis and we'll jump right into it. The first suburb is called Meadow Heights. It's about 18 kilometers north of Melbourne CBD. There's a couple of other surrounding suburbs that are going to perform really well also. So there it is, just on the north of Melbourne. Let's jump in and have a look at the price graph. This is the price graph for Meadow Heights. So we're currently sitting at a typical price of $621,000. Typical price is calculated differently to median price. But what you can see is that the price hasn't done much for 2 and a bit years. So the last time the price grew to was the start of 2022. So we've had almost 2.5 years, or basically 2.5 years of no capital growth in this area. Prior to that, you can see the capital growth went from about $500,000 up to about where it is now, about $620,000. So they didn't have a huge capital growth like a lot of other areas. But what that means is we've had a lot of time to catch up to this price. And now what it's started to do, the price has started to uptick. So it's in its early stages of a boom market. The growth rate is increasing, and you can see down the bottom here, these are the growth rates for 1 month, 1 quarter, 1 year. So it's had some very modest growth over the last little bit, but it hasn't counteracted inflation. Supply and demand are out of sync, and the supply is the stock on market, how much inventory is actually in the market right now versus the demand, how many people are actually coming into this market to then buy, which in turn pushes prices up, providing that those people that are coming to the market can afford to purchase those properties. So you can see at the moment, there's only 11 listings. Stock on market is well under 1%. There's only 1 month of inventory. So this is a hot market that's only going to get hotter. It's basically got no building approvals. It's got 14 building approvals. The hold period is almost 10 years. So that's how long people want to hold the property for, or how long they hold it until they sell it again. And then on the demand side, days on market is only 32 days. That's very tight, especially for where this is located in relation to Melbourne CBD. The vacancy rate is 0.63%. Less than 1% of properties are vacant at the moment. You've got a high search index ratio, and the clearance rates for auctions, not that there would be a huge amount of auctions out here, but the clearance rate is just under 50%, which doesn't show you that a lot of houses are selling at auction, but it's still pretty high up there in terms of the demand. So I can see that there's a high demand now, but I expect that that will only get higher into the future as there's no supply, as there's new buyers coming into the market that have the capacity to pay, in other words, pushing that price up. My next boom suburb for Melbourne, under $700,000, is called Deer Park, which is about 17 kilometers west of Melbourne CBD. The typical price in Deer Park is just a smidgen under $700,000, sitting at $690,000, so it just sneaks in that sub $700,000 category. But what you'll notice, similar to the last one, is the last 2.5 years, we've done zero capital growth in this suburb. So if you had bought in late 2021 or early 2022, like I'm showing you here, you unfortunately would have made no money in this market. So you've held it for 2.5 years, made no money. However, what's going to happen over the next couple of years is at least, I think, 10% growth year on year for the next 2 to 3 years. And you can see before that, the last boom cycle that it had was the end of 2020, and it finished soon, sooner than what it probably should have at the start of 2022. Have a look at the fundamentals of supply and demand. You can see stock on market is low. There's only 0.3%. Inventory is only 1 month. Building approvals, 0.13%. And the hold period is quite long, nearly 11 years for this suburb. The demand, the days on market is 40. It wasn't quite as tight to look at, but that's still really good. Anything under 60 days on market is a tight market. Vacancy rate is less than 1%. Auction clearance rates, I wouldn't even take that into account. But this suburb is hot and it's going to get even hotter, I believe, over the next 2 to 3 years. All right, the last suburb, number 3, is Delay, about 20 k's northwest of Melbourne. I'll zoom out a little bit. So it's just north of Deer Park, where we just looked at. Typical price is around $650,000. That is in August 2024. If you backtrack, again, similar to the last couple of suburbs we looked at, the start of 2022 was the peak of the market for this area. It's done basically no capital growth in that time. So you've had 2 years of what's called stagnation, which is zero growth. In actual fact, by the time you take into account inflation, this suburb, the value of a property in this suburb has actually gone down by inflation. And then you can see before 2022, it went through this boom cycle for only a couple of years. So again, very similar to the last 2 suburbs that we've just analyzed. We've got 2.5 years of stagnation, no growth, in real term numbers, negative growth. So what that means is now the market has caught up, people's incomes have increased, so people can afford more in these areas. We've got less supply, more demand, more immigrants. And what this is going to mean, in my opinion, is areas like this, which are affordable, are going to boom in price over the next 2-3 years. The supply and demand equation, again, the stock on market, there's only 7 listings, there's well under 1% stock on market. There's only a month of inventory left. There's 1 building approval. The hold period is nearly 13 years. This is even better than the last couple of suburbs I've looked at. The demand is huge as well. There's only 32 days on market. There's less than 1% vacancy rate. This suburb, I think, is going to outperform the last couple that we looked at. It just has so much pent-up demand, no supply, and there's people that are coming into this area that are going to pay over just to get a house in the area that is affordable. And that's not even taking into account any interest rate moves as well. This was just a high-level view on some of the stats that I look at when pinpointing high growth locations that are in their boom cycle. And boom cycles typically last for 2 to 3 years, typical. But in this instance, we've had a lot of pent up demand, a bit of that mini boom that you guys saw, which only lasted for a couple of years between 2020 and 2021. And these markets have been in stagnation, so no growth for the last 2.5 years, which is absolutely crazy when a lot of the other parts of the country have gone up in value in crazy amounts. Places like Perth, like Brisbane over the last couple of years have just had phenomenal growth. Areas of Sydney, but unfortunately, a lot of these places in Melbourne haven't done much in terms of price growth over the last couple of years. So it is unfortunate if you did buy in Melbourne, especially in these areas over the last couple of years. However, your time is coming. A lot of Melbourne markets look to be at the bottom of the cycle. Some of them still have a bit of pain left to go, unfortunately, but these ones are the early adapters. They, in my opinion, are going to boom by at least 10 to 15% per annum, probably more than that. I normally am conservative, but I think just buying blindfolded, you're going to do 10 or 15% growth per annum in these areas. So stay tuned, have a look at this video, maybe in 6 to 12 months and see what these suburbs have done. I haven't got it wrong very many times with picking suburbs that have grown in value. Normally what happens is the market will start to grow like it has done here, and it might grow steadily, and then it might all of a sudden, or normally all of a sudden just has that boom where it just does like 20-30% growth in like 6 months. It just goes through that massive boom cycle. So if you're already in the market and you're an early adapter at the very start of that growth wave, you'll be in a really good position to take advantage of these huge boom cycles. My name is Adam Panisi. Hit that like and subscribe button if you want to see more of these videos on how to make money from property from somebody like myself that's actually doing hundreds of property transactions.